Hello, everybody, and welcome to the War Room. This one is for the UFC 268 main event, the rematch for the welterweight title between Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. Okay, I've spent Friday, Saturday, Sunday researching and preparing my breakdown show for BT Sport, and then we recorded it last night. And my brain is flooded with this fight. There is so much to talk about. I'm going to try and take my time a little bit in this one and just try and get all of the information out that I think is relevant. The reason why we've just recorded the Weili against Namajunas fight. And the reason why that's not quite as complicated by comparison is because they're quite clearly different fighters. They have different skill sets. They have a different approach to the fight. You know, Rose is on the outside with nice agile movements, stepping in with stinging shots, and has got a great ground game. Weili is very similar, but she's a bit squarer. She's more strength and power based, and her ground game is different as well. It's not quite as sneaky. It's more oppressive. She grabs side control and smashes you. With Usman and Covington, they're very similar in the way that they go about their work. They're just slight differences, minor details. Like Usman is just a tiny bit bigger. Oh, I've not changed all my screens over, Jamie. I'm still on the old show. 1 second. Like, Usman is just a tiny bit bigger all around. He's an inch taller, and he's got a 4-inch reach advantage. But even when you see them match up, he's a more physical individual. He's more heavily muscled, and I also think that this has been the same perception from some of their opponents as well. Like, the point of difference between Dos Anjos' fight between Usman and Covington is that Dos Anjos was far more willing to try and take Covington down. He tried 6 times and he got 3 of them. Against Woodley, he tried to take him down once and it was stuffed immediately, and he just never bothered again. Against Usman. Woodley as well. Woodley tried to take them both down once. He was successful against Covington. He wasn't successful against Usman. He was only able to control Covington for 14 seconds, but still, he was able to get him to the floor. With Usman, he wasn't able to. I think there's a strength, there's a muscle mass, a physiological difference between the two, which is evident if the fight plays out that way. But then, if we stack the size and muscle mass and possibly just kind of the raw strength on the end of Kamaru Usman, then on the opposite end with Colby Covington, we've got to give him like the muscular endurance, and we've got to give him the pace, and we've got to give him the willingness to work when tired. Covington fights in a way where he's always a little bit at risk. Against opponents where Usman has smashed to pieces and been completely untouched, Covington's made it look hard work sometimes. Not really hard work, but unnecessarily difficult. Like, say, for example, if we look at the Damian Maia fight, and this is where like their similarities extend all the way through from they both wrestled out of Iowa for a while before they transferred to different universities because of, bad taste relationships and issues in Iowa and all that kind of stuff. Like, Usman went to Nebraska, Covington went to Oregon State. They both wrestled at 174. Colby was Division 1, Usman was Division 2. Coming through the UFC, they've Usman's had 20 takedown attempts against him. Covington's had 24. But 3 of the 4 opponents that have tried to take them down are all the same. It's Maia, RDA, and Woodley. The only point of difference is that on one side you've got Usman fighting Burns, and on the other side you've got Covington fighting Dong-Young Kim. But still, if you look at Maia, so Maia fought both of them over. Usman over 5 rounds and Covington over 3 rounds. Against Usman, he tried to take him down 15 times and failed every time. Against Covington, he tried to take him down 13 times and failed every time. But he landed 53 punches on Covington in 15 minutes, and he only landed 33 on Usman in 25. So you can see there's a point of difference there as well. When it comes to their first fight, the other thing that stands out to me is the volume of strikes that Usman threw to the body. So it was 175 strikes landed for Usman, 143 for Covington, a 48% success rate. So again, Usman is slightly ahead of him, but 30% of those shots to the body, and some of them were really impactful as well. Like, there was an uppercut in the first round, and you just kind of saw Colby kind of cave a little bit, and that's where the fight, in my opinion, started to change. So what have we seen since? So we've seen Usman defend his belt against Masvidal twice, and we've seen him stop Gilbert Burns as well. Covington's only had one fight, and that was against Tyron Woodley. And that was a very, very different fight, a very different performance to his one against Usman for a multitude of reasons. It felt to me like he had more respect for the striking power of Woodley. So we'll see if that's different this time around, because Usman's coming off those two, beautiful knockouts, especially that one against Masvidal. That might change Covington's approach. He might have a bit more respect for him in that sense. He might not fight out of his ego quite so much, and I think if he does that, then we'll see him utilize the rest of his game, which we didn't see in their first fight. But then if you compare their first fight to Covington's next fight against Tyron Woodley, he's moving away, he's using defensive footwork, he's using kicks to the body and to the head, and he's also using his wrestling. He didn't shoot against Usman once, and this is a point that I keep coming back to, is he doesn't need to be the better wrestler in the minute. He doesn't need to be the better wrestler in the round. He needs to be the more consistent wrestler over the period of the fight, the 25 minutes or less. The more he gets Usman to work, the more he's setting the pace for Usman, and the more Usman has to think about defense as opposed to offense. The reason why Usman looks so strong against all of his opponents is because he doesn't let them into the fight. I know he had a bit of a scare against Gilbert Burns in the first round, but usually, he gets caught with a couple of shots in the first round and then he just locks the whole fight down. I think Maia caught him with a shot that worried me, kind of rocked him a little bit as well. But generally, Usman doesn't allow his opponents in. He's the stat leader for control time. He's spent 66% of time in top position. I mean, he's just dominant. And I think this is where, if you're putting a game plan together, like for me, Kamaru Usman's game is pretty straightforward, right? He keeps this fight standing and he forces Colby to deal with those straight punches. Any other circumstance, Usman is now playing into Colby's game, because if he's slightly out of punching range, he's allowing Colby to work his kicks. If he's in punching range and he's wrestling, then he's allowing Colby to rely on a part of his game that he's already comfortable in. And Division 1, Division 2, I mean, I don't know as much as some of my American listeners the differences there, but you've got to think that in a wrestling exchange they've got to be fairly evenly matched, because one of them would have tried to take advantage of it, surely. Like that fight, and it was a great fight. It was a great fight. But it wasn't a really technically nice striking fight. It was a striking match between two guys that are excellent wrestlers, but two guys that had enough respect for each other's wrestling to not engage there at all. Like there's even a point in the first round where Usman kind of postures as if he's going to shoot, and Covington drops his hands and points at his leg like, go on, I dare you. Like it was almost like neither of them wanted to fire that first shot when it came to wrestling, because they didn't want to then get into that exchange where one of them would find out that the other one is better. And I honestly don't know which one is better. Like, you look at the stats, no one's ever taken Usman down. But the people that have taken Covington down have not been able to control him for very long. I mean, total, 3 minutes 40 of control. Woodley took him down and held on to him for 14 seconds. Dong Hyun Kim took him down and held on to him for 1:08. And RDA took him down and controlled him for 2 minutes and 14. Like, I know those numbers, they've stuck in my brain now. Like, that's not long. He's not being held down. He's not being controlled. People aren't dominating him on the ground. He got caught in a guillotine once by Wagner Silva, but Usman got caught once by Alex Caceres' brother, by rear naked choke. So they've got that little susceptibility to a submission, which is in earlier in their career and maybe not quite a vulnerability now. More similarities still. But the thing with Usman is, because he shuts his opponents out, he works at the pace that he wants to work at, which it allows him to pace himself and to work steadily and look like he is supremely conditioned over 5 rounds. If I'm Covington, I've got to ask questions about that, because that's one of my main assets in all of my fights. It's my ability to throw more at them, to keep them working more than they want to work, and to wear them out. And I don't think he invested nearly enough in doing that in the first fight. I don't know whether it was because he was hurt by the body shot in the first round, or whether it was because he felt like he wanted to try and prove something by trading punches with Usman. But he's got to weigh up what he wants coming into this fight. Like, does he want to prove something to Usman about, who's got the best hands or who's got the best chin or who's the toughest, whatever, or does he want to be the champion? Because I think if he comes and asks the right questions of Usman, he might be able to find holes in his game. And of course, it's going to be difficult to do. I'm not underestimating that in any way. But if I put myself in Covington's mind for a moment, I go, okay, well, the only stat of all the stats, the only stat I beat Usman in is number of takedowns landed. He's landed 61 takedowns. Kamaru Usman is third with 49. So immediately I'm going, okay, well, that's an asset that I can work with because I've got a higher pace of takedowns. I've got a good quality of takedowns, and they don't all have to win. The analogy I used on the breakdown show is, it's like a predatory animal. Like Colby's takedown accuracy is 50%. Like most animals, most predatory animals don't get a meal half the time. Like you have to work hard for these things. Like what is it for tigers? Like 1 in 16 or something, or maybe that's lions. I'm not sure. But like the enthusiasm to keep going and failing and keep going is one of the things I feel like Colby has proved to us, even in that loss in his last fight. Like you can't discourage this guy. Like you can't break him mentally. Like he'll take damage and he'll start to slow down physically, of course. But if he doesn't take damage, he doesn't slow down. You can't discourage him. Like even as the fight was waved off, he's still arguing his case. He's still saying that the fight should have continued. He's very good at talking up a storm. And I do feel to an extent that there is a lot of self-belief in that. I also feel like Usman's really turned the corner in these last couple of fights, though. Now, the fact that he's fought, 3 times in the same time that Covington has fought once, and he's the champion, proves something to me, first of all. The first Masvidal fight shut him down for 25 minutes. Then he fought Burns, someone that was a friend and a training partner, someone that he was familiar with, emotionally invested in. Same as Rose against Weili the first time around. He was cold in that face-off. When Burns offered a glove, he didn't take it. And I felt like Burns was kind of wounded by that. And then after the fight, once he'd got the victory, then you saw his emotion come out of it. His ability to shelve that emotion, whether that's emotion because I like this guy and I hope he does well, just not while I'm the champion. And the difference between Masvidal, I just would love to punch this guy in the face once a day for the rest of my life because it made me happy. That's a different kind of emotion, but both can be impactful if you're susceptible to it. And that's where I don't think Usman is. I think if he fights a blank-faced opponent in Colby Covington and he just measures the fight like a competitor does, sticking him with those straight punches and keep switching his stance, using his wrestling to defend takedowns or slow the pace of the fight down if he needs to, he's going to win this fight again. If Covington can come in and live up to his nickname and create that chaos, stay on the outside and throw a bunch of kicks and give Usman a lot to think about, swarm him with a multiple strike attack and then start level changing underneath and not be discouraged if he shoots 10 takedowns and every single one of them fail, that Covington has really got a good chance of winning this fight. And if he is able to ask those questions about Usman's conditioning over 5 rounds when he's not working at the pace that he's setting, then we've got the potential to see other things in Covington's game. And I don't think he's got the pop in his punches or his kicks to really hurt Usman. I think he's a pretty hardened individual, and I think he takes a hell of a shot. Accumulative, though, absolutely. Calf kicks, low kicks, kicks to the midsection, anything that will gradually drain him, incremental damage over the distance will also support that heavy wrestling offensive that I think he's going to need to try and break the cardio of Usman. And if he is able to break that cardio, then that's where people start making mistakes. And the reason why rear naked chokes work so well with wrestlers is because most wrestlers are more familiar with being bellied down when they're being controlled than turning and giving their back. That's why Usman spent 0 time on his back, because he's so good at stopping everybody doing it, basically. But fatigue changes those kind of things, and if it gets into the 4th or 5th round and Usman has been working at Colby's pace and Colby might be exhausted, but if he can continue working while he's exhausted, he might be able to find that moment where Usman lets go of that whizzer to put his hand on the floor so he can get back to his feet, and then Covington jumps on his neck, just like Caceres did back in Usman's early career. He's going to have to be really tired to do that. And if he can get Usman to that point where he's tired, then there's potential for that to happen. But it might not be able to get in there in 25 minutes. He might just have to work really hard and win the fight minute by minute. What haven't I talked about? Let me just quick show you this. I don't tend to show you my notes, but there's my notes for the breakdown show, which are all nice and neat. And this was me over the weekend trying to get my head around it. Not quite as neat and tidy. But every now and then I say something, I write something down and it sticks in my mind and I have to keep reminding myself of it. So like things that I've written down here. If Colby doesn't take damage, he won't slow down. Right? Colby needs to break Usman's pace. Usman needs to control the pace. It's the thing I kept coming back to. I kept circling back around. I feel like Covington controls the outside range because I think his kicks are better than Usman's. Usman's got a nice front kick to the midsection, but, I feel like the variety is definitely on Colby's side. I also think he's got a better control of his volume of punches because he doesn't throw everything into him. Whereas if Usman lands one good shot and rocks you, then he tends to stiffen up and he tends to start getting a bit, and like everything starts to lock up because he's still not got that familiarity that, a career striker would have, that bang, someone's hurt and then they'll walk you down and pick that shot. And that's when you really see someone's got a handle on the striking range. I don't see that out of Usman, but I do think he's on his way there. And I do think the main attributes that he's got are absolutely lethal. He's probably got the best straight punches in MMA right now, in my opinion. What else haven't I talked about? I think that's everything. It's the variety of attack for Colby. It's the pace of the attack. He's got to break Usman's pace. Oh, what a fight. I've talked your head off. I hope that's made some sense. Catch you next time.